This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
Welcome back to another episode of the Fantasy Footballers Podcast. It's championship week, week 16.
Happy championship week. Hey, you guys.
If you are still alive, congratulations.
I am.
If your league is in the semifinals, unless you're doing a FanDuel league, why are you in the semifinals?
Week
Who's playing till
17
week
should
17?
ever be involved in fantasy. Ever.
Yep.
Ever.
Unless it's FanDuel, because then you can cherry pick.
Okay,
But-
FanDuel's one thing. Like, you can get some great streamers out of a FanDuel lineup. Trust me.
Yep.
But it's championship week. Andrew, are you in any of your in any of your leagues? Are you in the championship?
No, sir. This is my worst fantasy season in 5 years, Nicholas.
Wow. All right. I, however, am in a championship. It's in my yearly league that I do. It's normally my big money league that I've been saying this entire season is not for money this year. Well, I found out this week that nobody told me it is for money. Nobody told me all season long. In fact, we were told early on in the season to hold on to your money. And then I find out this past week they're talking payouts, and I'm going, wait, what? So I texted our commissioner, and he said, yeah. I was like, oh.
Okay.
Okay. I'm not going to complain. I'm in the championship. I've already profited. So just take my cut out of whatever I win, and there we go. Yeah, it was a pleasant surprise.
Mm-hmm.
It was a pleasant surprise.
And you just broke even in our league this week.
I did just break even in our league this week, thank God. So that honestly, this was probably...
How does free fantasy football sound this year?
Amazing. This was probably my most profitable week in fantasy football history for me.
Oh, wow.
Because obviously I've only been in this league, which is the biggest money league I've ever been in. This is the first year I've done this. And pretty the other leagues that I've won were nowhere near as much money, I don't believe. So,
Yeah.
Yes, I do believe between DFS and our DFS league, along with my yearly league, this week turned out to be my most profitable week in my fantasy football career. I don't tend to partake in a ton of DFS contests weekly. You know, I do my 3 or 4, and a couple of those are probably free vouchers. And I like to play one that I really believe in, that I'm willing to put some money towards, and then the rest that I'll just throw a couple, 50 cents to $1 at, just to take a long shot chance at like 100,000 spots.
Yeah.
So, but then I have my yearly leagues, and again, this year is my big one. I guess we are for money, and because of that, well, now I win some money this week, and I with it being between DFS, I won some money in pretty much every contest this week that I played in. Obviously, with our DFS league that I won this week and making it to the championship, I had a pretty comfy weekend.
There you go. I made a last minute, 15 minutes for a kickoff pivot that kind of killed my lineup this week. And that was pivoting away from Derrick Henry to put in Alvin Kamara and spread the wealth across the rest of my lineup, which meant upgrading from Corey Davis to AJ Brown, which didn't end up being an upgrade. So,
believe it or not, all of my lineups this week could have been better. I had who did I have in and take out? I can't remember, but I had someone in who played really well and put up like 20 some odd points, and took him out for someone who didn't do well. I think it was at the tight end position, if I remember right, but. It didn't matter, obviously. It would have mattered in some of the bigger leagues, probably would have jumped up a tier, but either way, I could have actually played better than I did this week.
Yeah.
But
I was just thinking, once they announced that Breeze was back, and I'm like, ooh, this. And when they announced Michael Thomas was out, I'm like, this is Target City now for Alvin Kamara. And
it very easily could have been. I mean, there was a very good chance. It's not like Kamara played poorly. He just
he didn't
explode like we had hoped.
Yeah.
And a lot of people were hesitant on Derrick Henry, and this is probably one of the reasons you backed down on him, was because of his price tag of 10-3, which is a ridiculous price tag for one player. Yep. You have to massage the hell out of your lineup to make that work. Like, I struggled. I struggled for 2 days to try to find ways to fit Derrick Henry into the lineup that I wanted and be comfortable. So it was tough. I struggled for 3 days about it and finally ended up having to give in to myself and change out my tight end and do a couple things that I wasn't necessarily excited about. Like, I was not excited about starting the Dallas Cowboys defense. It panned out, but I wasn't excited about it going in. So it was a tough play, but I had to make some cuts so that I could get Derrick Henry in. And a lot of people were worried because of that price tag, and also with the fact that the Titans probably were going to be up by a lot very quickly. And for that reason, they'd realize they wouldn't need Derrick Henry, and he probably wouldn't play the entire fourth quarter. Well, he kind of didn't play the entire fourth quarter, but my thought process was he'll probably still have 150 yards and 2 touchdowns by then.
But no matter how bad I had the fantasy blues this week, it's never going to be as bad as this situation that Field Yates tweeted out today of a person who was in his fantasy league semifinal game, was up 0.46 points with his opponent not having a single player left to play. He has the game in the bag, and he still had Juju and Eric Ebron left to go. Up 0.46,
Ouch.
no one playing on the other side. Ebron gets hurt, leaves with 0 points. Juju scores -0.5, and he loses the game. Nick,
Ouch.
I would quit fantasy at that point.
That's a bad break. That's the extreme bad break. Now, what I would have done if league rules permitted this, because there are leagues that do not allow this. There are leagues where you must submit a full roster and have a full roster finish out the week.
Yep, the fantasy I'm commissioner of is that way.
In any league that I am commissioner of, that is the rule. You have to have a full lineup submitted by the beginning of the weekend, by the beginning of the first game. You can switch out a player before they play, but you have to have a full roster finish out the week, basically. So if a guy has an 8 o'clock game, you can still make the switch up to that game. But you have to have a full roster submitted by the 1 o'clock games on Sunday, or in this week's case, the game's on Friday. But of those players, you can still change them out for other players. You cannot leave a spot empty. That is my rule. But I don't know what their league's rules were. So if I were him, and this is a move that I would talk shit about constantly. Like, I would rag on you and call you a pussy for hours on end and make you wear a dress at the next year's draft party, whatever, if it were done in the regular season. Playoffs is a whole different ballgame. Take no prisoners, leave no chance. I would have sat both of them. I already got the game in the bag. I would first go through every single box score I can find on the games for all of my players and make sure that there was no point adjustments that could take points away or give him points.
Yeah, because you are leaving yourself with that close a margin. You are vulnerable to the game flipping on a stat correction.
Right.
So.
I would take no chance and verify all box scores matched, so point corrections don't screw me. And if they did, which most tend to, I would then bench both players if I could.
Yeah.
In the regular season, I would absolutely destroy the person who did this. I would absolutely destroy them the minute I saw him doing it. However, in the playoffs, anything goes.
Yeah.
You're just trying to survive and move on. And I'd respect it at that point. But regular season, ain't no way you're doing that. Hell no. However, in a league that I would be commissioner of, you can't do that anyways. You'd get an automatic TQ.
We had a situation in one of the leagues I'm a commissioner of a couple years ago where we had a player who was the top seed in the final week of the regular season going into the playoffs. And he tried to bench his players so he could intentionally lose and go down to the second seed, because putting him in the top seed, he did not like the side of the bracket that he was going to be on in terms of like the players he'd have to face. So he wanted to be the 2 seed and take that bye week with who he thought would be easier matchups regardless of who came out. And it caused like a whole controversy in our league. And I ended up ruling that you have to, like, it's the rule, you have to keep your players in. I know it's strategy. You're trying to get your matchup that you want, but you got to keep your play. You can put shit players in if you want, but you got to keep your players in.
You got to play a full roster. It's the rule. No, I completely agree with that. You have to play a full roster in my mind. You can play a bad roster, but you have to play a full roster. It's the rule. It's, I don't love the idea of purposely losing games. I think that's a crock of shit. I mean, it's one thing if you're trying to go for a number one pick, but if you're just trying to get out of your top seed, well, I think you're just a loser at that point.
Oh, and sorry, I forgot one other part of it. Him losing the team that he would have lost to, that would have gotten them in the playoffs, and they were clearly a team that would be a pushover team in the playoffs. So he wanted them in the playoffs for that match.
Nice.
So anyway, yeah. Speaking of playoffs, speaking of Fantasy Championship Week, we do have some situations with some injuries. We have situations just with some bad matchups, and every year there are owners in the championship week that are looking for some last minute streamers.
I'm going to cut you off real quick.
Yeah.
Before we get into the streamers, I did want to ask you one question.
Yes.
Because I am in a situation where I could use a little bit of luck on my side here. Because again, the way our league panned out this year is the top two teams in the league ended up being in the championship game. This is actually one of the first fantasy football seasons that I can remember that I've been in where the top two teams ended up in the championship game. It doesn't usually happen. No, it doesn't. But top two teams are in the championship game. I go up against. I'm the number 2 team. He's the number 1. I have beaten him already this year in the only matchup we played.
Okay.
I beat him by 1.5 points on a comeback. It was a Monday night game that took me over the edge. But my question for you is, Andrew, do you have any championship week superstitions? And I'm curious, and I'd love to hear if anybody out there has any championship week superstitions that they like to do. I'd be curious to hear if anybody else out there, hit us up on Twitter. Let us know if you have any championship week superstitions for fantasy football. So, Andrew, let me hear if you have any.
I don't know if I consider it a superstition per se, because I don't feel like it's something that's going to cause me to lose, but it also gives me insane anxiety if I don't do it. And I really need to have a player going either Sunday night or Monday. I hate being the guy in a championship week being done by 4 o'clock. And then I'm all right, I have a 30-point cushion, but he has this guy left. And now I have to sit here and wait. Nope, I hate that position. I have been known to sometimes play a lesser matchup because I couldn't stand not having someone later.
That was kind of my position this weekend. Excuse me, with our DFS league. That was my position this weekend. I had every player going at 1 o'clock. Yeah. And I feel like every single week in our DFS league in particular, if you're done at 1 o'clock, you got no chance.
I think this is the first week that I saw someone win.
However, I did have one player going Sunday night. I had a wide receiver going Sunday night. So again, I didn't quite have everybody going at 1, but I had everybody but one player going at 1 o'clock, and I hated that. The entire day, I'm looking at the scoreboard damn it.
They're catching up.
But either way, I hate the feeling of being done by 4 o'clock, even just after the 4 o'clock games. I hate being done that early. I almost feel like I need someone going in the 8 o'clock or the Monday night game.
And it preserves your mood too.
It does.
I'm okay. I still got a bunch of players left.
I mean, if you're down
my week isn't over at 4 o'clock.
60 points, go with one guy left. Obviously, you don't have a shot and you're done.
Yeah, but if you got a bunch of guys, you're my week isn't ruined until at least 8 o'clock tonight.
Right. So either way, it's I actually have not looked that far into my lineup this week.
Yeah.
I've just kind of reveled in my win in the semifinals and making it to the championship game today. I just took today to enjoy it and kind of bask in the glory. Because mind you, I'm the youngest person in this league. I'm also the newest addition to this league.
Yeah.
So being in the championship game and just taking this league by storm just feels so good because it's the young buck coming in who clearly knows way more about fantasy football than some of these people. Granted, they take this league very seriously, but okay. So that
reminds me that actually reminds me of the year where when we were writing for that website where we did the football writers put together a fantasy league and they wanted to do a 2-division fantasy league where they have 5 guys from the football division and 5 guys from the movie division, which is where we were. And it felt so good to come in from the movie side and beat all the football guys.
Granted, we did write for the football side too.
Yeah, but they didn't know at the time because that was a year prior. So
right.
So they didn't know what they had coming.
So looking at my lineup, I do have a kicker going Monday night, so that's no help. I do have a tight end going Sunday night, but everybody else I have finishes Sunday by 4:30. I have a Friday game, a Saturday game, a couple Saturday games.
It's going to be spread. Like, this is going to be a hard week.
This is a hard week. I do have a guy I do have a running back on my bench that can go Monday night, and I may be needing to switch out my running back this week, so we'll see.
Here's my other thing. And this is less a superstition and more just a piece of advice. Don't overthink it. Go with what's worked.
Yes.
Yep.
That's why,
don't try to get too cute with it.
That's why, I did set my lineup for this week so far, and obviously I'll tweak it throughout the week. But I set my lineup already, and I put in a guy who did not play last week, and there's still no confirmation he's going to be healthy enough to play this week. So, but I put him in because that really was one of the guys that when I was on my big stretch and really taking control of the league, he was my guy. He was one of the guys that was a huge performer and a big step up for me. So,
yeah.
Just to give me some confidence going into this week, I inserted him back in my lineup with the hopes that he plays. And that's Antonio Gibson. When he hit that stride, he was on fire, and it really, really propelled me up to where I got. But I also went with a quarterback who, mind you, I haven't started this quarterback in about 6 weeks now. However, he's been outperforming the guy I have been playing almost on a weekly basis, and that's Kyler Murray, and I also have Justin Herbert.
Yep.
So both of them have very middle of the road matchups this week, but Kyler Murray right now is the number 2 scorer in fantasy football. So I said, you know what, I'm gonna roll with them. They're fighting for a playoff spot. I'm gonna do it. So that's what I got so far. Right now, the projected totals are 5 points apart with him ahead of me. But there is one thing that's very contingent on little COVID rules situation, because he has Ronald Jones going up against the Lions, who is on the COVID list right now.
Yeah, we'll see.
So I'm hoping
he's also injured, not just on the COVID list. He's also injured, I believe, too.
All right. Well, that makes me feel quite a bit better. All right. Ronald Jones, COVID-19, unlikely to return week 16. Okay. He is expected to miss the week. All right. That helps me quite a bit, actually. It does. But either way, again, this is the highest scoring. I'm going up against the highest scoring team in the league, but not by much. I was second. Yeah. I was second by 20 points, so it's pretty close. But I have beaten them once, so I think I got this. But and no other superstitions besides making sure you have someone going late.
Yep, that's my thing.
That's fair.
I'm not the most superstitious fantasy player, I guess I should say.
I really don't have too many superstitions either. I like to, if I'm not planning on making any pickups in that week, which I'm not. My lineup is going to be what it is. There's not anybody on my waiver wire that I say I'm going to go grab. There's nobody there. So in play, there's no point in me trying to grab a guy off waivers, not even for draft keepers for next year or anything like that, because it's too high of a pick to rely on a waiver. So,
where is it in your league?
3rd round.
Ooh,
it's high. Yeah, it's high. So there's nobody there that's worth it. So
I was going to say you could try to grab Hurts, but yeah, never mind.
No, not worth. So I'm going to sit on my lineup the way it is. So with that being said, I set my lineup early in the week, and then I honestly I kind of forget about it until Thursday night usually. And I kind of decompress from fantasy football until we get towards the weekend. Thursday, right before the Thursday games, usually when I pay attention and I start looking at injury updates and things like that to really kind of gauge myself for the weekend. So obviously, if I have a big guy who is injured, I will pay attention to his status throughout the week just in case I have to make a waiver pickup. And
that's where our streamers would come in.
It is.
Just real quick, I'm not even going to consider this guy a streamer, but I just want to throw him out there because he's going to be a top priority this week if he's not already picked up in your league. He's still available in a little bit over half the leagues, and that is Jalen Hurts against Dallas. Obviously, if you're in need of a quarterback and you have a top waiver, grab him and play him. But other than that, you're probably not in the championship game without a solid quarterback. So
I have 2.
All right, so let's get this started here. First guy on my list, Tony Pollard. Tony Pollard is going against Philly this week. He's available in a little over half of leagues right now. Zeke's status is uncertain. He literally said he's unsure if he'll be able to play. So literally uncertain.
Are you feeling a little bit of a breakup going on with Zeke and the Cowboys? Because there's a lot of rumors swirling out there that he's going to be traded in the offseason. Are you feeling a breakup?
And yeah, and at the same time, like I feel bad because it's not his fault.
No, it's suck. Not. They really do, and it's all because Dak's not there. And granted, the O-line's nowhere near as good as it used to be, and the defense is no good. But injuries have decimated that O-line this year. That was already depleted from years past, and then you had Dak go down, and without an extremely top of the line O-line, and without Dak Prescott, that team is nothing.
Yeah, but So, yeah, Tony Pollard's coming off a huge game against the 49ers defense, a really good defense here. And now he gets a softer matchup with Philly. Is this the guy looking at to stream this week if you're in need of a running back? Or just a flex play?
Maybe a flex play. I don't expect the type of performance we saw last week where he had a really good game, especially for DFS purposes. I'm not quite expecting that kind of a performance because the Philly matchup isn't a great one. It's very middle of the road towards kind of leaning. It's a below average matchup. Yeah. I'll call it that. So it's not a great matchup.
I was thinking it's a better matchup than the Niners. That's all I was saying.
It is. It is a better matchup than the Niners, yes. But either way, I'm hesitant on calling him any more than a flex play just because Tony Pollard, while albeit has been good in times past, I'm not saying the ceiling is all that extremely high this week. And the floor could be pretty low also. So as a flex play, yes. But beyond that, I'm not overly confident in it. I am confident in him as at least a flex, though.
Yeah, I do. I like it because of the fact that he's shown they can get it done on both sides of the offense in terms of in the run and in the pass. He's been very active. So it's not often you get that kind of volume out of a streamer. So if he's available in your league, I definitely look his way.
The volume aspect does bring up a good point, too.
Yeah. Next guy is Lev Bell going against Atlanta. Clyde Edwards-Helaire suffered a high ankle sprain this past week. Lev Bell is actually owned in just over half the leagues. He's available in about 40% of ESPN leagues. He's coming off of a 15 carry for 62-yard game. He also had a touchdown in that game. He's going against Atlanta. Atlanta's a pretty tough run defense, but considering Lev Bell is probably going to be the only guy back there this week, what are your thoughts on streaming him?
Oh, I kind of like this a lot. Reason being, like so much so, I just pulled up Lev Bell on my Yahoo app. Reason being, while Atlanta is a solid run defense, like they are very solid against the run, they do give up a ton of points to pass catching running backs, and Le'Veon Bell very obviously is a guy who you can rely on to get you some receptions in a game and make some plays after the fact as well. So if he is given the opportunity that we hope he will be given and are expecting him to be given, where he touches the ball 15, 20 times in this game, I think the ceiling is pretty high for him. I think he's got a really good opportunity to make some plays happen up against this Falcons team, especially if the Chiefs are playing ahead. So I think Le'Veon Bell could be a guy you can look at and say, hey, this is a really solid streaming option for sure.
Yeah, and what also makes me optimistic about Le'Veon Bell against Atlanta, it's the same thing that made me optimistic about Clyde Edwards-Helaire heading into the year, and I didn't realize they weren't going to give him the ball ever again after that, was the fact that the Chiefs can really spread the defense out with their pass game to where Le'Veon Bell should be seeing some open running lanes. It just depends on if they give him the ball. That's really where it depends on, and apparently that's become something that's extremely unpredictable with the Chiefs. I don't know why, but I do like Le'Veon Bell as a streamer this week, especially because at the goal line, he already is the back at the goal line. So at the very least, he has some touchdown upside there too. So I do like him as a streamer this week.
Don't you hate when he's already owned though?
That's it. He's the widest owned streaming option.
I shouldn't be surprised he's owned in this league. I just thought I had seen he got dropped like 2 weeks ago, so I was like, maybe nobody picked him up.
I dropped him.
I know somebody in my league had dropped him a couple of weeks ago, but so I was hoping he'd still be available. But someone who honestly isn't even in it picked him up, which really bothers me. And never was in it. I don't even think they made the postseason, which winners or losers bracket. So
check for this next guy, Salvin Ahmed from Dolphins. He just came back from injury.
IR.
He just came back from injury. He had 23 carries for 122 yards and a touchdown against a pretty good Miami defense.
He's on Miami.
Now he gets to sorry.
I was going to say, how do you go up against the Miami defense?
No, who did Miami play last week? Is it New England? Yeah, it's a pretty good New England defense. Is what I meant to say. Yeah. So anyway, as I was saying, now he gets to go against the Raiders, who are allowing the 4th most fantasy points per game to opposing running backs. He's owned in about 2/3. He's available in about 2/3 of Yahoo leagues. What do you think about Salvin Ahmed?
I love it, actually. I think Salvin Ahmed is a guy that you can look at and say, you can roll with him. He's got great ceiling. Like, it's very high. He may even have the highest ceiling of any of the guys you've mentioned. Just because of the amount of volume he gets, the workload, the focus of the offense also being very run-centric. And even if they have Tua, they still run the football a ton. He had 24 carries up against the Patriots. That's a lot. And if he gets that kind of volume up against the Raiders, which that's a really bad run defense, I'd look for Salvin Ahmed to have a really good game this week for sure.
Is he available in your league?
He is. And I'm just looking at who to drop for him now. Okay, let me ask you this.
Yeah.
Is it safe to drop Alexander Mattison at this point?
Yes.
You're saying yes.
You're in the championship game. Dalvin Cook's not hurt. You don't need Alexander Mattison.
What if he gets hurt in practice though?
Oh yeah, if he gets hurt, that's the only way.
The thing is Madison's also hurt.
If he gets hurt in practice, then you.
I got a guy that I can drop. We're good. I got a guy.
You don't need a handcuff for championship week.
True.
But yeah, I agree. I love Salvin Ahmed. He might be one of my favorites on this waiver. Maybe more so than Tony Pollard. Sony Michel, final running back here, owned in only a quarter of leagues. He's available about 75% of ESPN leagues. He's going against Buffalo this week. Last week he stepped in place of the injured Damian Harris. He had 10 carries for 74 yards. Buffalo's a bomb 10 run defense and just gave up 61 yards and 2 touchdowns to Melvin Gordon on just 11 carries. Do you like his prospects this week against Buffalo enough to consider him a streaming option?
I do. I am, call me crazy. I'm still a believer in Sony Michel. I think he's a good running back who just who's gotten a bad beat, hasn't gotten the opportunity, and when he has, he's found a way to get hurt.
Yeah.
I think Sony Michel is a guy who has a really good opportunity to be successful. I think the Patriots defense is good enough to slow down the Bills to where they don't let this game get out of hand. So I think he'll remain in the game script. So I think Sony Michel is going to get a good opportunity this week.
I agree. Obviously, that is if Damian Harris does not end up returning from injury this week.
Right.
As long as Damian Harris is out, it looks like the Patriots have immediately just trusted Sony Michel with the rock again. And yeah, this team's out of it. And yeah, game script is probably not going to be in their favor. But again, Buffalo's been pretty porous against the run lately. And it looks, judging from Melvin Gordon, doesn't take many carries to do some damage. 61 yards and 2 touchdowns on 11 carries.
That's right.
So yeah, that's definitely a solid streaming option this week. Although I will say I do like Pollard, Ahmed, and probably even Lev Bell a little more.
Fair enough.
My final guy is a wide receiver, Darnell Mooney from the Bears, going against Jacksonville. Darnell Mooney has a touchdown in each of his last 2 games, and he gets a pretty awful Jacksonville pass defense. If you're in need of a wide receiver play, are you looking Darnell Mooney's way?
I would have to be desperate. In the championship week, you're going to have to, if you're in the championship, you probably got good depth already. But if you're in a desperate situation where you need a guy you can stream and just throw everything at the dartboard, this is a chance you can take. This is a risk you can take. Is it something I expect to be successful? No. I think the Bears have found something out with their offense where they pound the rock 30 times a game, which means fewer balls thrown to guys like did you say his name is Daryl or Darnell? Darnell Mooney. Fewer balls thrown his way. So I think that makes him overly touchdown reliant. So I'm going to say only if I'm desperate when it comes to Mooney.
Yeah, he's a guy that I've actually enjoyed playing the last couple of weeks in FanDuel, but he just doesn't. It's a touchdown reliant play, and the reason I play him in FanDuel is because he's been super cheap, and it's just not a. When you're talking about a streaming option in a championship game, I'm not really looking for touchdown reliant.
No.
So
you're looking for volume.
Yep, exactly.
So whereas Salvin Ahmed could be a guy that is a championship-winning streaming option, I don't think Darnell Mooney is going to be a championship-winning streaming option.
Darnell Mooney is more of a guy that can maybe shore up an empty spot on your roster if you really don't have anybody.
Right.
That's about it. And hopefully get you touchdown and don't end up absolutely killing you at the position. But I agree. I probably don't look Darnell Mooney's way unless you're really desperate for a receiver. Then maybe. But if it's just like a flex move you need to do, any of those running backs you named earlier would be better plays. All right, move on to starts and sits.
Let's do it. So, again, because we are recording this a little bit later in the week, we do get some DFS values here. Mm-hmm. So we're able to give you guys the dollar amounts going out for these guys that we mentioned, which honestly makes it a little more fun.
Yeah.
So, whereas in weeks past, I haven't taken my own advice on this. I did last week, and look what happened. Yeah. Pretty much everybody I mentioned last week was either solid or really, really good.
See, I always start, like my starting point is always the guys I'm talking about in the show. And then what I do is I look for, all right, now where can I upgrade to the actual like studs that are too obvious for me to name on starts and sits? And then oftentimes it's me taking out the wrong guy from the guys that I named and killing myself with it. But all right, let's start with quarterbacks. My first quarterback start is going to be Tom Brady against the Detroit Lions playing on Saturday.
Absolutely.
He's $8,000 on FanDuel. Over the last 4 weeks, Lions have averaged 28 fantasy points per game to the QB position. That's ridiculous.
That's a lot.
And Tampa's fighting for the division. So this offense should be firing on all cylinders, and the Lions simply do not have the personnel to stop Evans, Godwin, AB, and Gronk. I don't even know why I'm trying to make a case for this. It's Tom Brady against the Lions. I mean, come on. This is the same defense that Mitch Trubisky averaged 20 fantasy points a game against. All right, this is a no-brainer. That's it.
Yeah, this is probably. I know 8,000 is expensive, but it's worth it. It's worth it to get that kind of matchup. The Lions are terrible on defense. Absolutely terrible. Just terrible.
Just terrible.
My start of the week is going to be Baker Mayfield going up against the Jets. $7,600, a little bit cheaper than Tom Brady, but he plays on Sunday, not Saturday. Mm-hmm. And the thing I like about Baker Mayfield is look at his numbers the last like 3 or 4 games. I believe he's had like 118 QBR. He's been one of the most ridiculous quarterbacks the last 3 or 4 weeks. I saw an unbelievable stat about him under pressure and not under pressure, and he is easily the best quarterback in the league with a clean pocket. And when he's got a bad pocket, it ain't pretty. Like, he's really bad. Yeah. It's the biggest drop-off I've ever seen. But luckily, lately, he's had a lot of clean pockets, and he's been able to develop some real good rapport with Jarvis Landry and the rest of those receivers there, especially Jarvis Landry, and make a lot of plays happen. And the Jets' defense is, woof. They're bad. That whole team is bad, even though they did just beat the Rams this week and ruin.
Don't be fooled by the fact that they won.
Honest to God, that's probably the funniest and dumbest win I've ever seen. You literally just lost out on Trevor Lawrence because of it.
They lost by winning. That's what happened.
I know. But Baker Mayfield at that kind of value, I'm taking that all day up against that Jets team. I'm just hoping that they don't get too far ahead too early.
Yeah.
So I'll take Bake Show.
If you're looking at
baked, as I call him.
If you're looking at terms of salary, look no further than Andy Dalton at $6,900 against Philly. I know Dalton is a swear word around these parts, it feels like. But Andy Dalton gets the Philly defense. It's been allowing 23 fantasy points per game to quarterbacks over the last 4 weeks. And Philly's also at the bottom of the league in interceptions this season with 5. The only team less than that is Houston with 3. I mean, Ben DiNucci didn't even turn the ball over against Philly. This is the softest defense that Dalton will have faced all season, and I'm expecting that to translate into his highest point total of the season, which honestly isn't that much, but when spending $6,900 in a QB, you're just really looking for 20 points out of that position. I think Dalton will get you there this week.
You know, I really hate when you convince me on starting Andy Dalton because you almost make me want to. My next start of the week is Jared Goff going up against the Seahawks.
Jared Goff!
There is no secret that the Seattle Seahawks are a god-awful passing defense, and at $7,400, a little bit cheaper than Baker Mayfield, you may get equal production out of him, if not a little bit more. Jared Goff is going to be on a revenge tour this week, trying to compete for the NFC West because I don't believe the Seahawks have clinched it just yet, but they're on the brink if they haven't. So the Rams are fighting for that spot and fighting for a higher seed in the playoffs as well after an embarrassing loss last week to the Jets. So they're looking to have a little bit of a revenge game up against a divisional opponent. So I think Jared Goff's going to be all pedal to the floor, going all not holding anything back this week. I like Jared Goff's prospects. Mm-hmm. Any sits?
Do you have any more?
Nope.
Or are you going to go sits? All right. Josh Allen is my sit of the week at $8,800.
Oh, talk dirty to me. Talk dirty to me.
Is that who you're going against?
Yep.
So here, I'll give you some good news. Then the Pats have been bullying QBs all season long, and
I know. Don't I know it?
Josh Allen knows it too. We faced him in week 8. He managed 11 completions for 150 yards and no touchdowns plus a pick.
Oh, that'd be amazing.
Although he did run one in. I'll give him that. I don't expect him to be quite that ineffective this time around, but I will say this. He's certainly not going to give you the type of fantasy output that's worthy of an $8,800 price tag. So I avoid Josh Allen this week.
The thing that scares me is it's Josh Allen, and that Bills offense is firing on all cylinders right now, so I'm a little bit nervous. But my sit of the week is Ben Roethlisberger going up against the Colts. We're starting to see signs that this Steelers team is a little bit fraudulent. They hadn't really played anybody during their 11-0 start, and since then they can't win a ball game. They lost to some bad football teams, and this Steelers team is struggling in a big way, and they need to kind of get things right. But I don't think it's going to happen up against the Colts. Colts are a team that is firing in all cylinders, and they're really looking to cement their spot in those NFC playoffs as a high seed. So I think Roethlisberger is going to have another tough week going up against the Colts.
I agree with that, actually, especially considering what they've looked like the last few weeks.
In my opinion, they're looking straight up fraudulent. They look like they aren't any good.
I've never seen a team be the last undefeated team being 11-0 and then look that bad the next 3 games.
Yeah.
Running backs?
I have actually one more sit.
Oh,
it is Russell Wilson going up against the Rams.
Woof.
That's a really, really, really tough matchup, and I know it's Russell Wilson, but he just hasn't looked right in this second or third of the season, I guess. He hasn't looked the same. The offense hasn't looked the same. He's turning the ball over a lot more, and I think this Rams defense is going to be a tough one because, again, the Rams are on a revenge tour up against a divisional opponent here. So I think it's going to be a tough matchup for Russell Wilson this week. He could turn the ball over multiple times.
Look no further than how he performed last time they played. It wasn't pretty. Yep. All right, moving on to running backs. I guess I'll take the low-hanging fruit. Dave Montgomery, 7,800 going against Jacksonville.
I thought he had the Giants this week.
No, he's got Jacksonville.
Oh, whoops. The Ravens had the Giants. Sorry. Yep, Jacksonville, the Jags.
It looks like the Bears have finally figured out a source of offense.
Yeah, and pound the rock.
Yep, just give the ball to Dave Montgomery. You guys have been on a tear the last 4 weeks. He's actually the only running back the only running back to put up more points than him over these last 4 weeks has actually been Derrick King Henry, and that's only by 2.7 points. The next closest running back to Montgomery is Nick Chubb, and he's a full 20 points behind him. That's how good he's been.
Wow.
Next up, he faces a Jags D. It's bottom 3 in the league against a run. I was expecting him to be in the 8,000 club this week on FanDuel, but
I am so happy he's not.
Until then, whee!
Yeah, pretty much. I would be riding the David Montgomery train as far as I could.
Yep.
He's been unbelievable the last few weeks, and after what I saw with his volume total this past week, my God, I think they handed him. Would they give him like 34 carries or something like that?
In low 30s, yeah.
It was a stupid. I haven't seen someone carry the ball that much since like the 90s. So
since Derrick Henry.
I don't even know the last time I saw Derrick Henry hit 30 carries. I'm curious, has he done it in a game this year?
I'll tell you, but give me the start, and I'll probably interrupt you.
But my next start of the week, and I went with a value play this week. If you're looking to shed some salary,
31 first game of the year.
Okay, all right. So, but I went with a value play here. If you're looking to shed some dollars on your DFS roster, which is a guy I mentioned last week as a deep value play, and I'm calling his name back again, and it's J.K. Dobbins going up against the Giants. $6,300, a little bit more expensive than the $5,900 he was last week, but that's because he produced. So you're going to have an increase in dollar value, but at $6,300, it's still pretty cheap. So I like J.K. Dobbins at that value up against a bad Giants defense who gives up quite a bit of points to running backs, and I think with the Ravens playing with a lead much of this game, most likely, Dobbins is probably going to get quite the workload. So I like J.K. Dobbins going up against the New York Football G-Men.
That's another guy I had in and pulled out.
Yeah, I didn't pull him out.
Miles Sanders against Dallas is going to be my next start of the week. We're going to gradually go lower in dollar values here. $7,300 for me. You can play this on Saturday. And honestly, for the first time since the early weeks of the season, I actually have confidence in Miles Sanders. Over the last 2 weeks with Jalen Hurts starting, he's been the RB6 overall, and that's including a matchup against one of the best run defenses against the league. Now he gets to face a Cowboys defense that has allowed the most rushing yards in the league. I'm looking for a 100-yard game from Sanders this week. I can't believe I'm saying that.
I like Sanders a lot too, and I said it a few weeks ago when I said with Jalen Hurts under center, look for Miles Sanders to have a rebound to his season, and so far I've been right, and I think that's going to continue this week up against the Cowboys. But my next start of the week, and I'm going to stick with the lower dollar value, lower than anything you've mentioned, that's for sure. It's Leonard Fournette going up against the Lions. He is $7,000, and in the absence of Ronald Jones last week, he produced. I think he's going to produce.
He's more expensive than Rojo.
He is more expensive than Rojo. I think he's going to. No, he's not more expensive than Rojo. Rojo is a little bit more expensive. I think he's $7,300.
Okay.
But Leonard Fournette produced last week up against a better defense than the Lions. The Lions' rushing defense is god-awful. And I think Leonard Fournette's going to be able to have another big game in back-to-back weeks against said god-awful run defense. I look for Fournette to have big numbers.
If Rojo does go, do you pivot back to Rojo?
Yes.
Okay.
That's if I get a clean bill of health for Rojo, though. If I'm hearing that he's not going to be 100%,
but he's going to play.
Then I probably avoid it altogether. I avoid that backfield altogether because I don't like timeshares in that situation. But I do expect Fournette. I don't expect Rojo to go, and I do expect Fournette to have a big game as a result.
My next start's going to be Austin Eckler. We're now at $7,000 going against Denver. The Broncos have a bottom 10 run defense on the season. They're coming off a game where they just gave up 149 yards on 21 carries to the killer duo of Zach Moss and Devin Singletary. For those doing the math at home, at 7.1 yards per carry to those guys. They are actually allowing the most yards per carry over the last 4 weeks at 5.5 yards per carry. But what Eckler really needs to pop is touchdowns because he's only registered one this season. But you know what? No worries.
Granted, he missed like 80% of the year.
Yeah, that's true. But Broncos are actually also giving up the most rushing touchdowns to running back over the last 4 weeks. Their run defense has imploded over the last 4 weeks. This matchup is attractive, and the price tag, I think, is even more attractive. So
I like Austin Eckler a lot to the point where when I set my early DFS lineups, he's in them as of right now. I don't have another start. Do you?
I got one more.
All right, let's hear it.
And we talked about him earlier. Tony Pollard, 6,300 against Philly. He like I said before, he put up 28.2 points against the 49ers defense, which is a borderline top 5 run defense in the season. Now he gets the Eagles defense, which is more of a middle of the road run defense, but despite that, his price tag is still insanely low at 6,300. Zeke's ready to come out and say he's unsure if he'll be able to go. So I think this means incredible value for Tony Pollard. He sees enough volume, and like I said, in both the run and pass game to give me confidence that he can have another nice week against this defense.
I don't hate the play. That's
We're
good
no longer
value.
talking championship streamer. We're just talking.
No, that's 6,300 for a starting running back is extreme value in my mind.
Yeah.
Moving on to sits here. My first sit of the week is going to be Kenyon Drake going up against that 49ers defense.
Ooh.
I know they had a rough week last week up against Dallas and Tony Pollard, but Kenyon Drake just really has been the biggest disappointment of the fantasy football. One of the biggest disappointments of the fantasy football season in my mind, and I think that's going to continue up against that Niners defense because I think that the Cardinals know where their money is made, and that's on the arm and legs of Kyler Murray, and I think they're going to rely on that in a big way. Kenyon Drake, I think, is a touchdown reliant matchup this week against the 49ers.
I'm normally terrified of Kenyon Drake, and now with going against the Niners D. My sit is Dalvin Cook against New Orleans. This is a Friday game, disclaimer. He's $9,000 going against New Orleans. This New Orleans run defense allowed their first 100-yard rusher in 55 games 2 weeks ago, and it mostly came on one play, too. But what are the chances it happens again 2 weeks later? The thing is, when you're paying $9,000 for a running back, that's exactly what you're betting on. You're betting on it to happen again. No, thank you.
Bastard. He's going to put up 200 yards. My next set of the week is James Robinson going up against the Bears. Bears defense is still pretty good. And that Jags offense is not, now that they have the number 1 pick locked in, they are not looking to do a whole bunch. So I don't expect James Robinson to go pop off and ruin their chances against the Bears' imploding team. I expect James Robinson to have a quiet day. just because it's a tough matchup to begin with, and on top of that, I really don't think the Jaguars are looking to do too much. So
here's a Jags game plan: keep the ball in the hands of Gardner Minshew.
Yes, and in all reality, in games where game script has not gone the way of James Robinson, whereas there's some guys who can still put up a good performance, James Robinson is almost entirely taken out of games where game script does not go his way, and I think that's going to be a situation here. So I don't like James Robinson for that reason also.
Yeah. Let's move on to wide receivers, and you're going to be shocked at the first one. No, you're not. Chris Godwin, 7,400 going against the Detroit Lions on Saturday. Now, Chris Godwin actually
7,500 for him.
I had 74, unless I misread it.
Maybe I misread it.
You can double check it while I read this. Anyway, so Godwin's been a disappointment for fantasy owners this season. As
I've got 7,200 for Chris Godwin.
Did he go down?
Apparently.
Okay.
I've got 7,500 for Mike Evans.
At 7,200 this week. That's actually going to be equal to his lowest value of the season in FanDuel. I think he's hit 7,200 one other time, I want to say. But just in general, and as you can tell by the values, he's been disappointed for fantasy owners this season as they wait for a week where he pops, and he just hasn't yet. He's yet to cross the 100-yard mark this season, but I think that changes this week. Joe Roberts has been getting burned since replacing Trufant a couple weeks ago, and MVS went for 85 and a touchdown against him. Corey Davis went for 110 and a touchdown against him. Speedy wide receivers who can get behind a defense are the guys you want to target against this abysmal Lions secondary. And Godwin is that guy this week. I think he'll give owners a pleasant surprise and go for 100 and a touchdown. Granted,
A.J. Brown is the speedier wide receiver for the Titans, and the bigger wide receiver ended up being the big beneficiary this past week in Corey Davis. He's not as fast as A.J. Brown, but he's a hell of a lot bigger.
He's still fast as all, too, though.
He is pretty fast. But I took things a step further than just Chris Godwin. I said Bucks wide receivers going up against the Lions. And by that, I mean Mike Evans is 7,500, Chris Godwin is at 7,200, and Antonio Brown at 6,600, who scored his first touchdown of the season this past week. I think all three could have very good games. I'm looking at the top two in particular to have solid games. Antonio Brown's much more of you need to massage your lineup a little bit to get someone else in. Maybe you take a look at AB. We've seen Tom Brady have rapport with AB in the past in the short few games that they've been together, though. So there is some reason to believe in that. But I do think all three of Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, and Antonio Brown could be real solid matchups this week. It could be real solid plays.
Yeah, I actually I've been thinking about AD in this matchup too. My only thing is, do you think that Justin Coleman will draw AD and AB? Because like AD's been playing out of the slot primarily. AB. God damn. AB.
I don't think it matters, to be in all honesty. I know Justin Coleman's a very good slot corner, but he hasn't looked entirely right this year, and slot corners have still been able to abuse the Lions. Pretty much everybody abuses that Lions defense because regardless of if he's in single coverage, I think AB is a good enough route runner where he can cause problems and create issues for that secondary, but also single coverage, you can't just rely on Justin Coleman to shut him down the whole game. There's holes in that defense all over the place, and I think he's able to find them probably better than anybody else in that offense. So I still think that AB could have a really solid week. But I definitely like Mike Evans and Chris Godwin.
Yeah.
My next start of the week, though, is I went with another duo of receivers here. Robert Woods and Cooper Kupp going up against the Seahawks. I don't know if I've seen this duo this cheap yet this year. 7,300 for Robert Woods and 6,800 for Cooper Kupp. The Seahawks secondary is terrible. And this is a stack that I would be looking at rolling with Jared Goff this week because of how cheap they are. You can put some money elsewhere. Robert Woods had a really good week this past week. Cooper Kupp did not. But that doesn't mean I don't think either one of them could have really good week this week. Because that Seahawks secondary is very soft, and I think both guys could end up having a really solid game.
It's going to be interesting because my next star of the week is actually Josh Reynolds at 5,100.
Really?
And here's why.
That's a deep value play. I like it.
It is a deep value play, and it's actually like a Hail Mary type play if you ask me. But if you actually look, the Seattle Seahawks defense since these two teams last played they haven't allowed a single wide receiver touchdown. And because of that, since these teams last played, they've actually allowed the least fantasy points per game to wide receiver, which is like over the course of 6 games. And the last time these two teams played, again, they shut down Cooper Kupp and Robert Woods, which is what scares me. But here's the thing. The Seahawks they've allowed 8.7 fantasy points per game in the position over the last 6 weeks. I'm avoiding Cooper Kupp and Woods, not just because of that, but because of how they played against them in Week 10. But Josh Reynolds comes at a basement level price tag, 5,100, with enough precedent for me to provide some belief that he could return value this week. Last time these two teams met, which was in Week 10, Reynolds actually had his best game this season, reeling in 8 catches for 94 yards on 10 targets. But it's not just Josh Reynolds. This team has let Ced Wilson on the Cowboys go for 172 yards. They let Gabriel Davis on the Bills go for 70 touchdowns just a couple weeks ago. They let Braxton Berrios on the wide receiver doing the Jets lead the team in receiving yards. So this team
I believe Braxton Berrios would have been their number 2 receiver because wasn't Jamison Crowder out this past week also?
No, he played.
Okay.
Yeah, it was 2 weeks ago, but he played. And so what makes this scary is Josh Reynolds has a total of 5 targets over the last 3 weeks. So
that's big risky play.
It's without a doubt a high risk play. But if you need to make room for guys like Pat Mahomes, Tyreek Hill, Derrick Henry this week, Josh Reynolds can help you get there at a $5,100 price tag, and he has a chance to return some nice value at the same time.
I don't necessarily disagree with that. I'm not going to buy into the Seahawks being a lockdown secondary in the past few weeks. Sample size is what I believe in, and the Seahawks, especially considering I really do believe the Rams are going to go with the classic up down theory and have a big week. And so I will ride the backs of Jared Goff and that top receiving duo. I think one of those two guys is going to have a really good week. But Josh Reynolds at that 5,100 price tag is extremely intriguing, just because of the fact that what we've seen with slot receivers in the past few weeks up against the Seahawks, that is something to look at. My next start of the week, though, is going to be Jarvis Landry going up against the Jets, and he is at $6,500. I still don't understand why he has not gone up above at least the $7,000 threshold.
Yeah, he's picked it up recently.
He's picked it up a lot in a big way. And pretty much right when the Browns offense started clicking finally, it was right when the report that the connection between Baker Mayfield and Jarvis Landry started taking off. And I think that's going to continue this week up against a bad Jets team. I went with a little bit of intel and a gut feeling this past weekend by inserting Jarvis Landry into my lineups up against a Giants secondary that actually has been pretty good. It mainly was because I saw a report that James Bradbury was going to be out this past weekend because of COVID, and I went, okay, beyond James Bradbury, ain't nobody stopping Jarvis Landry and ended up scoring a touchdown. So I think this week up against the Jets don't have anybody that's going to stop Jarvis Landry, so I think he's got a really good opportunity to put up some big numbers.
No, I actually really agree with that, especially considering the game I'm expecting Baker Mayfield to have. Ball's got to go somewhere, and I think Jarvis Landry is still going to be the top target there, so I do like that. What did you say his price was?
$6,500.
Wow.
That's cheap. Like I said, I don't understand why he hasn't hit the $7,000 threshold yet. Like, he's been so good lately.
My next guy is going to be Michael Gallup at 5,600 going against Philly. And he's had 22 targets over the last 3 games compared to 17 for Cooper and 13 for Lamb. He's also had 2 touchdowns over that span. So he's clearly building a solid rapport with Dalton and is emerging as one of his go-to options in his offense, which is really weird to me. It's like it's been Cooper and Lamb all season, and then now over the last few games it's suddenly Gallup. But the last 2 times these teams met, also, Gallup was targeted 12 times and reeled in 7 catches for 61 yards, and that was with Ben DiNucci throwing the ball. So not only has he become Dalton's seemingly go-to receiver, he's already exposed his team with Ben DiNucci throwing him the ball too. So it works on both ends here. And the quality of the target should increase with Dalton over Ben DiNucci. So if Gallup can get open as often as he did earlier in the season against this Philly defense, I think he should be in for a big week.
That's another sneaky good play right there. Moving on to sits here, unless you have another start.
Nope, I don't know how to start.
All right, my first sit of the week is going to be Terry McLaurin going up against Panthers. Panthers secondary is their lone good spot on their defense. They're tough against wide receivers, and Terry McLaurin had a decent week this past week. It wasn't great. It wasn't bad. It was good enough. And with Dwayne Haskins under center, it's just not the same quarterback that was throwing that was causing Terry McLaurin to do really, really, really well this year. He did have some good games with Dwayne Haskins, but I don't quite think Dwayne Haskins is as ready to go. And I think that this Panthers team is going to be able to slow down Terry McLaurin just enough this week.
Yeah, and especially with the whole strip club situation.
Yeah, so I don't even know what their quarterback situation is going to look at.
It's going to be. I'm fairly confident it's going to be a banged up Alex Smith.
It very well could be, and that's never a good prospect. Yeah. So
I'm going DK Metcalf against the Rams at $7,700. The Rams defense has been the toughest defense against wide receivers this season, and DK Metcalf can tell you about it firsthand. He faced him in Week 10. He was able to 2 catches for 28 yards. There's a pretty well-known rule to live by if you're a fantasy owner, and that's do not start wide receivers against Jalen Ramsey. So I'm going to stick to that rule this week and avoid DK Metcalf.
I went as far as saying just avoid Seahawks' top 2 receivers this week altogether.
There you go.
It's just a tough matchup. The Rams, I've said it several times now. I think the Rams are on a mission this week, and I think the Seahawks are the poor bastards that are going to have to deal with it. I think Jalen Ramsey's going to look to shut down DK, and I would think the rest of the secondary is going to look at shutting down Tyler Lockett as well. So where I said I don't like Russell Wilson because he's probably going to throw some picks, I don't like the receivers either. I would sit Seahawks players altogether. Granted, if you're in a championship game, that's what got you there. So, But either way, I don't love the matchup at all.
Yeah. Move on to tight ends?
Yep, let's do it.
All right. I only have 1 start and 1 sit on tight end. It's a weird league for tight ends where it seems to all be middle-of-the-road matchups, if you ask me.
Technically have 2 starts, and only 1 sit.
All right, so I'll let you go first then.
My first start's going to be Austin Hooper going up against the Jets.
Ooh.
$5,100. He's pretty cheap. This one was kind of a toss-up for me between Austin Hooper and David Njoku. I should have just don't think Baker Mayfield likes Njoku, though. I think he just doesn't like him at all.
Njoku's not a factor.
To the point where I believe it was Sunday night's game again, there was a period when Jarvis Landry caught his touchdown. He was blanketed in single coverage in the end zone. David Njoku was about 6 feet in front of Jarvis Landry, wide open. Nobody was within 10 feet of the man in the end zone, and Baker Mayfield still threw the ball over his head to Jarvis Landry, who was in real good coverage. Jarvis caught it for a touchdown, but I literally don't think I've ever seen David Njoku so wide open in my life, and he still straight up ignored him. So I went with Austin Hooper. He seems to have quite a bit better of a rapport with him. The Jets' defense is very bad against tight ends, so I think Hooper has a really good week, and at that kind of value, maybe worth the play. I
didn't even realize he was that cheap. I actually really like that play. And I will agree with you. I would definitely go Austin Hooper over David Njoku. It seems he's been relegated to a punchline in this offense.
Where he won't even get a ball in the end zone when he's wide the fuck open.
Yeah. So my start is going to be Rob Gronkowski against Detroit. Since Darrell Bevell took over from Matt Patricia, the Lions have actually allowed the 4th most touchdowns in the league at the tight end position and have been a bottom 10 defense overall against the position. Gronk's coming off 7 target games in 2 of his last 3 weeks. So if he sees anywhere near that volume, he's going to be well worth that $5,800 price tag. I like him this week.
Yeah, I definitely like it as well. I think the Lions are just a really bad defense against tight ends that we thought they were fraudulent when the numbers were saying otherwise, and we were right. My next start of the week is going to be Noah Fant going up against Chargers. $6,200, quite a bit more expensive, but the Chargers defense allows a ton of points tight ends, and I think that continues this week for Fant. He's had a really good season, especially lately. I think he's got a really good opportunity this week to put up some points.
My sit of the week is going to be Hunter Henry at $6,100 going against Denver. And 7 of those are actually against top 10 tight ends. I mean, I don't think there's any other team you can say face 7 top 10 tight ends. In those games, they're allowing an average of 52 yards and 0.2 touchdowns to those tight ends. Last time Hunter Henry faced his team, he was held to 4 catches for 33 yards and no score. This is the same team that held Kelsey at 31 yards in week 7 and Waller to 37 yards in week 10. I am staying far away from Hunter Henry this week.
Yeah, I mean, that's a tough matchup, but I'm going to be sitting Eric Ebron up against the Colts. Where I sat Ben Roethlisberger, I also am going to be sitting Eric Ebron. Granted, I don't even know if he's going to play this week, but considering he went out in the past game, but either way, if he does play, I'm staying away from him. I'm staying away from him either way.
Yeah. What about your defenses?
I got 1.
Same.
I went Chargers up against the Broncos, $3,600. That's real cheap. Broncos offense gives up a ton of points to defenses. They turn the ball over a ton. And I think Chargers defense has kind of turned things on a little bit late in the year. So I like the Chargers defense up against that Broncos offense that turns the ball over a ton. And also doesn't score a lot.
I know you're probably going to disagree with this one, but I'm actually going Seattle against the Rams at 3,900. The Rams, they're not going to. They don't rule out Cam Akers. They're not going to be able to do much damage on the ground with Darrell Henderson and Malcolm Brown. And I'm of the belief that I do think that Seattle has turned it around a bit in their secondary. So I think they're going to be able to contain the Rams' passing attack. So, not to mention, the Rams are also the only. Not to mention, only 5 teams have turned the ball over more than the Rams this season. So you have a defense that I feel like you can feel comfortable playing with the turnover cushion, and I just don't think it's going to be a high-scoring game. Plus, it'll save you money this week at $3,900.
I think this may be one of the few times you and I have definitely clearly disagreed on something. Yeah. I think the Rams are in for a situation where they are looking to just dominate the Seattle Seahawks this week. And not saying they're going to win by 2-3 touchdowns or even more than a touchdown. I think that it's going to be a closer game, but I think the Rams are going to look up to put up a ton of points after their embarrassing loss to the Jets last week.
What's the now you have me curious though. I'm wondering what is the over-under in that game?
I can find out. Seahawks, Rams, over-under. Right now it is 46.5. So they're saying it's going to be a fairly low-scoring game. So
what's the spread?
Spread is I don't have Seahawks open is Seahawks -1.5.
Oh.
So they're saying it's going to be close and low scoring. So they're saying it's kind of in your favor. The experts are agreeing with you. I just think that classic up-down theory leads me to believe that the Rams are looking. Plus, the Rams are competing. They want to win that division, and they want to at least at the very least get a higher wild card spot. And that loss to the Jets didn't help them. So I think they're going to be trying to go all guns blazing.
Yeah,
all guns
what is
firing.
That like a implied score like 24-23, something like that.
Something like that.
Yeah. It's going to be an interesting game. Because I do see where you're coming from too. Because if you take the season as a whole, Seattle has been terrible against the pass. So it's like, do you want to go the recency bias or do you want to go with the whole season sample? It's like a coin flip. I feel like
it can go either way. I won't be surprised if I am entirely wrong. It's totally possible.
One of us will be right.
Right. Obviously, we took each side of the coin. But. Anyways, anything else to add before we let things go to championship week?
That's all I got. Good luck in your championship games, and don't stress it too much because at least if you're in a money league and if it's a money league that's not winner takes all, at least you have some money cushion coming in. So.
That is one thing I can sit back and say, hey, at least I won some money. But anyways, guys, thank you again. As Andrew mentioned, good luck in your championship games this week. I hope to be, talking to you guys next week with a championship belt on my shoulder or a trophy in my hand.
Yep.
But we'll find out. So follow us on Twitter, guys, @RealFanReport. Let us know if you're in the championships of your game, and thank you to Detroit Sports Podcast. Andrew, thank you for joining me also. And we will catch you guys next week. This has been the Fan Reporters. Bye, fans.
Real quick, one thing.
Sorry, this has not been the Fan Report. This is the Fanalists. Wow, that's our other show.
As we creep closer to the real life NFL playoffs, look for a later in the week release date for these, probably around what you're listening to it now. I would say as we gear more towards a FanDuel focus rather than a full on
entirely a DFS focus,
standard fantasy league focus. So we'll be doing them more focused on FanDuel. So we'll be waiting to get the FanDuel numbers.
All righty, thank you again, guys. Have a good week. Good luck, and see you later. And have a Merry Christmas.
Yeah, Merry Christmas and good luck.